Well, welcome to the Climate Emergency Scrutiny Panel meeting. It's lovely to see you, and the agendas are well known and in front of you. I'm very pleased that we have 3 Cabinet members with us today. That is a record for this panel, obviously it shows how seriously you take scrutiny here, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. So thank you very much for your attendance. We look forward to your contribution as the meeting goes on. Okay, so as you probably know, this meeting is being spread to the universe, or the world anyway, and I don't know how many people are watching, but if they are, welcome. It's good to see you, well, good for you to see us, I suppose, it's a good thing to do to have this broadcast, so that's fine. So item 2 is the emergency evacuation procedure.
When the continuous alarm bell sounds, you must evacuate the building by one of the designated exits and proceed to the named assembly point. The designated exits are signposted. Arrangements are in place for the safe evacuation of disabled people. Apologies from Councillor Saskia Hedges, and the substitute is Councillor Joanna Wright.
Okay, good. Now we come on to declarations of interest. Grant?
Yeah, I don't think it's a pecuniary interest, but as part of my role as Environmental Sustainability Manager for an agricultural firm, we're classed as a large producer of packaging waste, and therefore I have the delegated authority to submit applications under those regulations for the extended producer responsibility, which is referenced in today's meeting agenda.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for doing that. Obviously, we're happy to. You can speak and get involved in that, and that's the next item. Keep it together. John. Okay, you have a man behind you who's going to sort out your microphone. Okay, that's fine. Happy for you to get involved in any of the debates, John. That's no problem. All right, so we now move on to urgent business agreed by Chair. And as I said in the pre-meeting, it's not exactly urgent, but there is a meeting of officers this morning, senior officers, I believe, in Keynsham, and consequently, we don't have the officer representation we normally have at this meeting. Okay, we move on to public or councillor statements. We have a bit of an odd one this morning because we have Saskia speaking as a member of the public, although clearly she is also a councillor, and Joanna is subbing for Saskia for the rest of the meeting. So when you're ready, Saskia. So the benefit of those watching on the screen, we're having a little bit of trouble with the microphones. But I think we're all right now.
All good. So I registered to speak at today's meeting because I wanted to speak on Vision Zero, but I was told this wasn't allowed because I'm a member of this body. I was asked to share my statement with the chair, and they would then decide if I was allowed to give my statement or not. Hence why Councillor Joanna Wright is now subbing for me so I can give my statement today. This panel was expecting Vision Zero to be on the agenda for this meeting, as discussed as part of the work plan previously, and it's very disappointing to see that it isn't on the agenda for today. When I queried this, I was told that it was being covered as part of the Cabinet member update because officers weren't ready with the required papers. The Vision Zero motion was passed unanimously 12 months ago, and in the motion it was requested for the administration to report back to the relevant scrutiny panel on progress towards these steps in 12 months' time. Covering this as part of a Cabinet member update doesn't give it the same attention as an agenda item. It also means that members of the public aren't aware it's being discussed today, which means they haven't been given the opportunity to speak on the topic. As part of the Vision Zero motion, several steps were identified to be looked into in the short term without having major cost implications. There are also further steps identified that would need to be costed. Without having been provided with a paper on this topic, it's very hard to scrutinise the work that has undoubtedly taken place in this area, as Baines had already adopted a Vision Zero approach much earlier than when the motion to eliminate road deaths by 2030 was adopted a year ago. In addition to the update from the Cabinet member that we'll hear in this meeting, I would like to request that Vision Zero is brought back to this meeting in January or March to allow us to give it the full attention it deserves. I would like to close with the terrible news of a teenager being hit and seriously injured on Newbridge Road and a woman seriously injured in a collision on Mount Road, both in September of this year. So when Vision Zero gets discussed at this panel, today or at a future meeting, I hope we will hear from the Cabinet member how we are making progress in gaining up-to-date data on the numbers and locations of people killed or seriously injured to inform our decision-making on highway projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Saskia. Are there any factual questions for Saskia? Okay. Assume that's a no. Or just to like to respond, I'm sure that the two Cabinet members will take the points that you've raised in their address later on in the meeting. Okay, we move on to minutes. We probably need somebody to say that they support the adoption of the minutes. But before I do that, thank you, Alex. That's pretty good of you. Are there any questions or any issues in the minutes that you'd like to discuss before we adopt them? Okay, fine. So Alex has proposed it. Do I have a seconder for the minutes? Thank you, Debs. Those in favour? Thank you. And then we move on to Cabinet member updates. There are 25 minutes available for this topic. And then I think Sarah is going first. And then we will go over to Amanda. Okay?
So, is that, yeah, the microphone's working. So I'm Councillor Sarah Warren, Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency and Sustainable Transport. So I think today, I know that you had an update a couple of months ago, I think, from my colleague Ollie Henman on the annual report on climate and nature, but actually there's so much going on in that space that I'm going to focus on those areas today. And the first thing to say, I think, actually, is that budgets are so tight across this area that everything I'm going to talk to you about today is able to happen because of the incredible work by our officers in successfully bidding and obtaining funding short-term from grants and funding pots all over the place. So that's a huge credit to them that we're able to do anything at all in this area. And there's just a huge amount of really positive news going on in this space. So I thought I'd begin by talking to you about the West of England Nature Partnership. So I spoke at their conference last week where we launched the West of England Local Nature Recovery Strategy. That's the first such strategy in the UK, and the production of it was led by our own Bath and North East Somerset Council staff. So it's a huge achievement for nature recovery. Once again, West of England is leading the way on this, and I particularly want to congratulate and thank Stuart Gardner, our Nature Recovery Manager, who led this work. The strategy is about creating a joined-up network of natural habitats across the region, natural habitats, wildlife corridors, and greener, more resilient neighbourhoods. So it maps not only those habitats that already exist now and are important for nature, but it also sets local priorities for nature recovery and maps focus areas where action for nature will have the biggest impact in future. So it's a hugely important document, and it shows real leadership, I think, in this area. And it will not have escaped your attention, also on nature, is that we have a technical paper coming to next week's council meeting, which looks to extend our capabilities around biodiversity net gain by collaborating with our neighbouring authorities. You'll remember that we were an early adopter of this policy, bringing it in a year ahead of government requiring it. And it requires developers to deliver at least 10% improvement in biodiversity compared to the state of any site before development. And once again, it's very pleasing to be amongst the leaders in this space of nature restoration nationally, and we are looking all the time to go further. In other areas of nature, I was going to update you on our Landscape City project, which is delivering nature recovery on some key council-owned sites around the city of Bath and providing evidence for investment in greening of the city. So specifically, actually, the sites we're looking at around the city include Entry Hill and the Tumps and Chalcombe Nature Reserve. And this is funded actually through external funding from WECA's Green Recovery Fund. So a successful bid there, and a number of the other areas of nature work that we're doing in line with our ecological emergency declaration are also funded through a similar route. So our Summer Valley Rediscovered project continues to work in partnership to improve the management of 34 hectares of green space in the Summer Valley for nature, as well as improving access. The Next Door Nature project in this area is led by Avon Wildlife Trust, and supported by the Council, is empowering local communities to manage spaces on their doorstep for nature. And then there's the Active Way project, which is all about getting people out into nature to improve their health and well-being. Because, of course, the three areas of priority that we have under our ecological emergency are, firstly, to increase the area of land and waterway managed positively for nature, secondly, to increase the number of species present, and thirdly, to increase the access of our residents out into that nature. So the Active Way project is getting more people out and about in nature in the Summer Valley, and it's resulted in greater opportunities for social prescribing to be used to help those with mental or physical health problems to get out and get more active locally and enjoy our green countryside. And then in Chew Valley, so the Chew Valley Reconnected Partnership continues to strengthen, demonstrating the benefits of working in partnership with a wide range of organisations across the catchment. We've provided key support to the coordination of this partnership, and we're currently supporting the development of a programme of work to enable partners to collectively unlock investment to deliver nature recovery targets and continue to connect people with nature. And the Water Space Programme continues developing the River Avon corridor. So the Water Space Connected project is being further developed, and funding is being sought to improve connections at the Somerdale site, helping to link Keynsham to the wider River Avon corridor and deliver nature recovery benefits in the coming years. And then, of course, there's Bathscape. So that's funded through a different route, through the National Heritage Lottery Fund, and it looks at landscapes on the hills that surround the city. And a number of these projects, actually, because of the short-term nature of the funding, are all due to come to an end at a similar stage. So that presents a real challenge, and it's something, actually, that once we have a new WECA mayor and with our new government, it will be really beneficial, I think, for them to look at how these kind of projects can be funded in a more long-term and future-looking sort of a way, so that we don't have this constant sort of scrabble to find where the next pot of money and the next pot of money is coming from. But nevertheless, the fact that they're going ahead at all is just, I think, fantastic. So then moving on to net zero. So we are working hard to continue to decarbonise our own estate and operations. To date, we've delivered 1.6 megawatts of solar generation across our estate, and we've installed heat pumps in 3 of our care homes, and for that we've used the public sector decarbonisation scheme. And we're currently bidding further, preparing further bids for the next round of public sector decarbonisation schemes. So again, officers working hard to prepare bids that may or may not be successful. And of course, another strand to that is that through budget setting, we'll have to find a source of match funding. A lot of these pots of money require match funding. So that's a constant challenge and pressure in these difficult financial times. But anyway, it's very exciting what we have done so far, and that we have a number of new officers in this space working hard to obtain further money. And I think Councillor Ball will be updating you in a little while, but we're looking at trials at the moment for electric vehicle waste and recycling trucks, because a number of them are up for renewal next year, and subject to budget, we're looking very hard at whether they could be replaced with electric vehicles, which, given the way technology is moving on, has become a possibility in a way that perhaps it hadn't been in the past. So that's super exciting. In another area, in terms of renewable heat, we are working with the West of England Combined Authority and the Coal Authority, looking at opportunities to recover heat from disused mines in Radstock and Peasdown. And then another area where there's masses going on, actually, is energy efficiency in buildings. So I'm very excited about this. We've got some new officers who've been in post for perhaps about a year now, and this is where the bids that they put in as soon as they arrived have really come into fruition. So we're working closely with Bath and West Community Energy, one of our larger local community energy organisations, and with other local businesses. So we were supporting partners for Green Open Homes event that took place over a number of weekends through the autumn. And this time, for the first time, it wasn't only in Bath, we went out to Radstock, Pensford, Peasdown and East Hartree. And what these events do is that those people who've already undertaken energy efficiency works in their homes, so what we call retrofit, where they put new energy efficiency measures into their homes so that they are cheaper to heat and cosier to live in. So they open their homes very kindly to other members of the public who are interested to learn about the measures they've taken. So we're very grateful, of course, to all those residents who were kind enough to open their homes, and to the volunteers who helped to make it happen. And so, because energy efficiency is, of course, one of our top 3 ways in which the council can help tackle the climate emergency. And it's one of the toughest areas, actually, for a council to make a difference in. If you think about it, you know, most homes are owned by private residents and by private landlords, and they take the decisions about what they do in their own homes. So whatever we can do to just facilitate that process and give people confidence and give them the know-how. We've actually got a great website which points people actually to lots of useful links, both grants and loans, and also sources of information. So we've also partnered with Bath and West Community Energy and with the West of England Combined Authority to support the Bath and West Community Energy's Home Energy Programme. So this programme includes subsidised energy efficiency home surveys for all homeowners, as well as initiatives specifically to support the owners of listed buildings, both residents and landlords. In September, calls to the retrofit West advice line from Bath and North East Somerset residents made up 24% of the total share, so that covers the whole of the West of England Combined Authority area, and our population is only 21%, so I think that's really positive, and it shows what a good job we are doing in getting the message out there to our residents. And residents can have 70% off the price of surveys on home energy assessments, and no, I can't. No, I don't understand that. I've got to note there that I don't understand. But anyway, that's really positive. Yes. So, and I'm actually, as a resident myself, I'm going to test out their service in the coming months. So that's very exciting, and see what I can do in my own home. And I'll come back at the next meeting and be able to recommend to you whether it was worthwhile. Our collaboration is also, so we're doing another one with Bath and West Community Energy and Bath Preservation Trust and other partners on the Green Heritage Homes project, which provides support to owners and landlords of listed buildings to understand how to retrofit for reduced carbon and energy costs. So this has included the launch of a Level 0 pre-planning application service to support homeowners to choose appropriate measures. So the message to residents of listed buildings is yes, you can retrofit them, and do get in touch and join in with the scheme and find out more about how. And now Bath and West Community Energy are recruiting listed building champions. So those people who come forward will receive subsidised energy efficiency advice from a Bath and West Community Energy home energy expert at the same time as a Bath and North East Somerset Council conservation officer, giving them a tailored set of recommendations for energy improvements to their homes. And in return, what we're asking is that those champions are asked to share their experience to help others. And finally, just to say that we've recently had another successful bid for national lottery funding for our new home energy network. So that's part of a consortium with Bath and West Community Energy again, the Citizens Advice Bureau and Age UK, and this will provide home energy advice for households at risk of fuel poverty. And I'm sure you'll be aware that lots and lots is also going on in the transport space, and just to reassure you that I'll come back with an update on that perhaps at the next meeting. But in the meantime, I'm happy to take questions on the topics I've covered.
Okay, I'll wander around the room. So, Grant, you okay? You okay, Grant?
At the last, when we were talking about net zero at one of the previous meetings, I mentioned about that we are basing our reductions in carbon emissions based on in electricity in particular, based on the decarbonisation of the grid. And I haven't really had a satisfactory answer, I wouldn't have said, to the figures we're using to convert electricity. So what I really want to know is how we purchase electricity, because the decarbonisation of the grid, a lot of industries will buy up REGOs where they're purchasing the green energy that the grid's producing, and that means that there's not a lot of green energy left over. And so if we're basing it on the decarbonisation of the grid, we're actually giving a false figure for what we're purchasing electricity at. And so I'd like to know what this council's actually purchasing electricity at, and whether we're overstating actually what our carbon reduction is, because it's based on the decarbonisation of the grid, which isn't a true reflection.
Well, I can get you a response about those data. As you've seen, we don't have any officers with us today, and I've got a feeling, but it might be wrong, so I don't want to answer your question about exactly who is supplying our electricity at the moment. But what I do know is that we're looking to the future, looking deeply into the possibility of taking perhaps a power purchase agreement with Bath and West Community Energy. But I will get an officer response to you on. So the question is around are you asking the extent to which the decarbonisation of the grid has contributed to our reduction in carbon emissions today?
So the current carbon conversion factors that this council uses is based on the average for the UK for the decarbonisation of the grid, which isn't a true reflection of how we're actually purchasing our electricity. And if it was if we'd had a standard residual agreement with a normal electricity supplier, I could guarantee you that the carbon factor would be more than double. Well, a lot more, actually, because it depends how you're basing it. But, so it basically means we'll be overstating our carbon reduction when it's actually a lot higher, because we're not buying electricity which includes renewables.
I'll get you a written response on that, because, not surprisingly, I don't have that information in my head.
Yeah, it's very interesting, actually. I've not thought of that, the fact that some of it would already be accounted for by green energy. So going around the room, June, do you have a question? Do you have a question, Jess?
I'm in business. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to thank Sarah for the detail she provided on the council's work on nature recovery. So not just ensuring no net loss, but also that we're actively doing stuff to improve the natural environment. And I wanted to ask really whether she would support a site visit potentially for this committee to the Chalcombe Biodiversity Net Gain site, so that we can understand in a bit more detail what's being done there and how this could be applied elsewhere. That's a question for the future work plan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be excellent. I was lucky enough to visit there recently myself, and it's really fabulous. It's really inspiring, and it's land that was formerly grazed by cattle, and I know that. So there's a local group there and they're now receiving money through biodiversity net gain credits. So from the council, which is funding their work, and they're about to go out with a survey to see what the community want to happen there. So it's fabulous. I think across all three areas of our ecological declaration, both it's a new area of land that's now newly being managed for nature, and of course, because of taking it out of grazing and bringing it into that way of management, we'll be increasing the species, and we're bringing our local people into connection with it and giving them the opportunity to work on it. So I think it's a fabulous example. So yes, great idea.
Yes, I really like what we're doing on biodiversity. I think it's a great area for us to be leading in. I'm very pleased to see that. I also like that we are using local planning policy to drive that forward, because that's a very powerful tool. And it just makes me wonder, are there other areas within local planning policy to drive forward on either biodiversity or other aspects of nature recovery?
Thank you, John. So yes, there are, and as we're updating our local plan, it's a really opportune time actually to be looking at these. So we are looking to see the extent to which, so we currently require 10% biodiversity net gain, which is what government requires. And I note that there are a very small number of councils, I believe, who are currently requiring 20%. So we will be looking to see whether we can do that. This is one of those difficult areas where our proposed planning policy, of course, has to be tested by an inspector, and they might deem that if we go further than they deem is acceptable, it may not be viewed as viable for developers. So it's an argument that would have to be constructed extremely carefully, and it's not necessarily a given that we would be allowed to do that. But we will be looking to see whether we can construct an argument that would put us into that group, once again, of real trend setters in this area. And then we're also looking to update our policies around and bring in more rigour around sustainable urban drainage systems and requiring developers to have more and better green infrastructure, and then also local targets for tree canopy cover. So there's lots of areas, and it's probably one to bring Councillor McCabe back at some point and talk to you in more detail.
That's working. Thank you very much for your update, Sarah. Just the question I've got is, how is biodiversity net gain funding being used to enable community groups to increase biodiversity in Bath, North East Somerset?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. That's where. So when the biodiversity net gain, in the first instance, when a developer wants to develop a site, the first thing we'll look at is whether they can increase their biodiversity on site. If they can't, then it may be that the developer themselves has another site locally, very close by, which can be developed. But if not, what is this area that I mentioned before, where the council can actually take money from the developers, and that's where we're able to put it back into these areas, such as Chalcombe Nature Reserve and perhaps other areas of council land, such as Entry Hill and the Tumps, and in the case of Chalcombe, of course, it's a local group that are benefiting. So it's a very exciting opportunity.
Okay, brace yourself. I'm going to say something good about Weka. Okay, are we ready? I know, it's rare, Grant, isn't it? Okay, so I just want to say the website's really good. I had a look at it just then, because we talked about it yesterday. I'm really proud, as the member for Chew Valley, that the local habitat map, which is really interactive, got quite a lot in the Chew Valley, so quite proud of that. But I do have a question about planning. Very slick. Could the West of England Nature Recovery Strategy be used as the basis of regional planning? Is that the idea behind it?
Well, I think that it could, actually. I think that once we have a new mayor, I think there's real scope for West of England to step back into that space of spatial strategy that in recent years it's stepped away from, and they put together an economic strategy already. We, the West of England, have put together an economic strategy, the beginnings of one, and identified certain areas for economic growth. And if they step back into that space for spatial development of housing as well, then I think there's real scope to put those nature-based mappings at the heart of that, and to make sure that, you know, whatever spatial plans we make for the region as a whole are looking at habitats across the region as a whole, and ensuring that we, you know, boost them rather than disrupting them.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sarah, for your update. I'm really pleased to hear about the work on retrofitting because when I look around my ward, I can see that it's just so vital that we can actually try and make our houses more energy efficient. And talking about that, we have a very active part of our residents association called Go Green Widcombe, who do a lot to try and publicise what's going on in retrofitting. So it'd be really helpful if you could talk a bit about how your officers are working with community organisations across on that area. And also, we also have quite a lot of conservation areas, and I think it's absolutely fantastic, the work that's been done on listed buildings. I don't know whether there's any possibility of extending that in some way to cover conservation areas, or whether that's for a future programme. Thank you.
So the question about conservation areas is a great one, and I will take it away and investigate further. And absolutely, I know about the great work that Go Green Widcombe do, and I've seen they've got videos, I think, on the Retrofit West website I've seen, and I know they run sessions for residents. So yeah, we do work very closely with them, as well as, you know, all those all the other organisations I've mentioned, and yeah, it's a real partnership, an area of partnership, because, as I've said, it's not an area where the council has the funds to do, or in fact the ability to go out into people's homes and to do these things, so it's such an important area for partnership, and we really appreciate the support from people like Go Green Widcombe.
Jo? Anne? Huh?
Thank you. Thank you for your statement. I'm a bit confused, Chair. In our PDS on children's and adults and care, we always have the Cabinet members' update sent to us as a written document before the meeting. I'm not aware of this document sent to this meeting beforehand. So it's very hard, one, for residents to look at that information, because I'm sure lots of them do go to the website to check the papers. And then also, when you're then going to scrutinise, which is essentially what PDS is about, look at policy development and scrutiny, how to look at some of the issues that are very brilliantly brought to us today by Councillor Warren. So I just raise that as an issue. It was very interesting to hear about the social prescribing and the Active Way project, and I just wonder, again, working through the other PDS panel, how the ICB are being brought into that piece of work and how we are working across committees on that piece of work. I have a question on the...
one question.
Is only allowed one question at this? Oh,
correct.
Again, at our... I have... you know, several questions here, and I can't ask more.
That's correct, because everybody gets a
But
fair crack.
we don't know what the Cabinet member is going to say, and then we can only ask one question.
No, you can ask as many questions as you can, but obviously in the time we've got, you know, I've got a question, and I'm going to ask my question after you've finished your question. Okay?
Thank you. Again, I'm not aware of that. I mean, again, going back to the other PDS, we can ask several questions. Thank you.
No problem at all. It's just, you know, the fair way. I don't know if you want to comment on that, presumably.
Yeah. Yes, I'm happy to send around the update by email afterwards, and I'm sorry it wasn't available before. In terms of the Active Way, so yes, absolutely, it's an area being led jointly between our Green Transformation team and Public Health, and so working very closely together, and we work closely with our health partners, but I don't have the detail of exactly what form that takes, and if you, I'm sure we can get an update to the other scrutiny panel, if that's what you'd like on it.
Chair, could I ask that you do talk to the other chair of PDS
and
make sure that that is brought together? Thank you.
Not a problem at all. You make a good point, Joanna. Thank you. My question is about, this is the last question because we're over time already, about the river, the water space project that you talked about earlier on, Sarah. As I'm the river advocate for this authority, I have I have a lot of interest in rivers and the way they operate, and what I've discovered is they're actually very complicated, complex things, because everybody seems to want to put their toe in the water, or put other stuff in the water, which is not helpful. So I don't know as much about the water space project as I think I should. My specific question is that there's been a lot of work on the River Chew, and obviously at Cambridge and the River Chew goes into the River Avon, and I was just wondering if the water space project extended to tributaries of the River Avon.
So this is where I don't have an officer here, and but we can get you a briefing on the water space project, no problem. I don't think that I think that the water space project runs the length of the River Avon, but I do know that we work very closely with there are groups like the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust who are working in Chew Valley, and we are working with them on exciting projects that no doubt in your Cambridgeshire Ward Councillor capacity will be coming to discuss with you very soon about, for example, helping to improve the passage of salmon up that river and so on. So it's lots of exciting work going on there, but whether it's part of the water space project, I'm not certain.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you very much for your update. We move on to Manda, who is, I'm sure, going to astound us with the activities that she's been up to. I hope, anyway. Over to you, Manda.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like that was an introduction I now need to live up to. I've got a few things to update on. First of all, general update. So our Extended Highways Improvement Scheme and Highways Maintenance Programme has made very good progress. When we did circulate this slightly in advance, at the time the carriageway and footway surfacing programme was 90% complete. We're now up to 95%, and we are very confident that it will be 100%. Likewise, the local active travel safety programme, we are on target to deliver what we said we were going to deliver this year. It's easier for me to say that than it is for the officers to have done this, because our expectations of what they deliver is higher than it's ever been, and they have absolutely risen to the challenge. So I do want to place on record my thanks to the officers who've delivered so far and continue to deliver. In terms of traffic management, network management and road safety, we continue to work with the road safety team on all our initiatives and campaigns, and most of this has to be done via our partner organisations such as Volker and UNEXT, and obviously the schools. We heard a statement from a member of the public earlier about Vision Zero. Vision Zero is not a separate campaign. Vision Zero is built into everything that we do within highways, because if it isn't about safety, what is it about? We've had quite a lot of complaints recently about our bus stop provision, so we have just put out an invitation to tender to procure new bus stop, and this is about the maintenance. It's not about the provision of information, and it's certainly not about the actual services that go there, which, as we all know, are run out of WACA. But if we are serious about more and more people using public transport, the only bit that we have any kind of control over is how comfortable it is and how easy it is to actually wait at the bus stop. So we are concentrating on the control your controllables, we're concentrating on the bit that we can control, and we're going out, as I say, to procure some new bus stops. The local active travel and safety programme, this is a really significant programme to deliver. We're trying overall to do 3 times more work than we have done before, and we have appointed consultants both for this year and also to help us advise on how best to do this scheme next year. Unlike the transport maintenance programme, highways maintenance programme, we can do this throughout the year, but there are a lot of the interventions that have been requested and have been prioritised that do really require good weather. So I'll come on in a little bit to what we're doing about gritting. So we are now at a stage where most resource is focused at reactive potholes and gritting rather than doing any of these schemes, which is why we have, if you do a straight line through the year, we're ahead of where we should be. Elements that I'm particularly pleased about, the zebra crossing on the A36 Warminster Road, which was completed. This is a key walking route for people to get to Bathwick St Mary's School. We do obviously give points to anything that can help active travel, especially if it's to a destination such as a school or a university or a large employer. Likewise, a zebra crossing at Five Ways Junction. We have a puffin crossing at the back, so Bath Eastern has had two significant interventions in this particular period. And then we've got a scheme that we called Aids to Mobility Overall. But what this is in terms of people who do find it difficult to go around, we've put some new drop curbs and some new tactile pavement, which for those people who are unaware, it gives both guide dogs and people who have got the feeling canes some kind of idea of what is going to be ahead of them. Is it going to be a curb? Is it a crossing, etc.? We've taken some barriers down at Peasdown St John because they were actually proving to be something that was a barrier, no pun intended, to people's easy accessibility. But we have put one up in Timsbury because it was actually going to stop people from going down a route that was less than safe for them. And we have put cycle stands in both Alexandra Park and at Keynsham High Street. Moving on to another of my projects, the City Centre Security Project. That has got very close now to being completed. As those of you who have been around for a while will know, it has changed beyond all recognition from how it was first specified, and has now got the moving bollards that allow both emergency vehicles, deliveries and blue badge holders access throughout the day within the city centre security area. And the only bits that we've got left to do around Bow Street, we are currently, as I speak, doing some trial excavation works just to see. One of the issues we have in Bath is whenever you dig in a pavement, despite the fact we have maps that tell you where they think the services like electricity and sewage should be, they never are where we think they're going to be. So until you actually do your trial digs, you don't actually know what you're going to come up with. And we've got to the technical approval stage for a lot of the schemes that actually fall more probably in Sarah's remit than mine, but we've been working as a highways team to make sure that they have safety embedded in them. In terms of the big highway maintenance that we've looked at, the big structures, the River Chew Bridge, Keynsham Parapet, which I know is something that's been wanted by the Keynsham councillors for a very long time, so I'm very pleased that we've been able to deliver that. And the Stamp Bank stabilisation works. We've done as much work as we can. We've got specialist contractor quotations for the last few bits to go in, and again, I know that's something that's been requested for a while. As I say, resurfacing programme is now complete, and we have done two kinds of resurface, well, in fact, three if you look at it. We have the reactive pothole filling that we do via Fix My Street, largely. We've got full resurfacing, which is very expensive and it takes a while for roads to get at the top of that list. But we also do this micro asphalt surface treatment, which is kind of a little bit between the two. So it's not patching, but it's not a full resurfacing. We haven't had those in long enough to know how long they're going to last for, but we are pleased so far with the fact that and we can put those in far quicker. Footway improvements, I am very keen that we ensure that as well as working on the highways, we work on the footways to the level that when we got some additional money last year, which was called the Pothole Fund, I think it was named the Pothole Fund because of the cancellation of HS2, we devoted the majority of that additional budget to our own highways, where we can see some tangible benefits already. The machine-laid patching programme, again, is completed, and we're now trying to do a second phase of it. And obviously, after that, we then have to do refresh marking programme, which has happened. Our street lighting is generally throughout the whole authority coming to its end of life. So we've done most, well, in fact, we've done all of the work to put the LED lighting in. Well, I think we've got 2 or 3 roads left to do that. But what we now also need to do is replace the columns. We do keep a very close eye on them because some of them are ageing, and we have had times when people have reversed into them and they've fallen over faster than you would hope. So that's a programme that we are aiming to complete, as you can see, by the end of this calendar year. Again, it's the kind of thing that's probably never going to be a headline, but doing this stuff is as important sometimes as some of the big programmes we do, because these are our assets and we do have to look after them. Our highway drainage programme is progressing to plan, and we're working with the drainage teams to try and ensure that we do some proactive cleaning before we have some of the increasingly common weather events that we are having. A lot of the problems we're having with flooding stroke near flooding aren't because of highway drainage, they're because of higher water levels, they're because people have concreted over the front of their gardens, they're because of lots of other ideas. So highways drainage does all it can, but highway drainage is not in charge of stopping flooding absolutely everywhere, because it can't possibly be, because flooding happens on places other than highways. Moving on to parking. We did a very large consultation, which I think we just completed by the end of the last meeting, last time we were here. We went through all the inputs and made our decisions based on the inputs to those consultations, and changed quite significantly what we went out to consultation on with the benefit of that input. The new charges have taken effect already in Bath and in Keynsham, which were, Bath was already emissions-based. We've now moved to emissions-based in Keynsham as well. They took place from last Tuesday the 5th. And Midsummer Norton Radstock and the on-street charges in Bath will remain as they are until January. We had also consulted on introducing charges for motorcycles, which, given the feedback that we got as a listening council, we took notice and we have paused those until some of the things that were brought up that we hadn't entirely considered have been looked at to see whether technically we think this is something that we should do. And when we introduced the charges in Midsummer Norton and Radstock, we've looked at what was necessary per area in terms of any kind of free period before charging commenced. So it was very valuable consultation with a lot of very good feedback. Won't surprise anyone to know not many people said, I would love to pay lots more for car parking. But that, I'm afraid, is currently the way of the world. We are benchmarked against our private car park providers in Bath, such as Southgate. And we also have the issue of penalty charge notices haven't gone up for about 10 years. And if you get to the stage where people think it's worth me not paying for my car park charges just in case I don't get caught, it's quite difficult. So there are two barriers to where we are with that. Livable neighbourhoods, I'm just going to go through what's the publicly available information is on that. I think the key things that I'd like to pull out is we took the full business case to WACA in September and it was approved without any conditions by the Mayoral Combined Authority, which has unlocked a further funding now of 5.2 million measures, which have been developed with the communities since 2021. It's one of our learnings from the ones that we've done up till now is you have to get the timing of when you go out for engagement correct. If you go out too early, without the technical work being done so that you've got something in front of people so they can say, I like this bit, I don't like this bit, have you thought of doing this? Then you end up with a very unstructured meeting where people don't really know what they're being asked to comment on and they don't particularly like it. If you go too late, it feels like there's a fait accompli and everything's been decided there, and it looks like you've got into too much detail before you get there. So we've worked very hard to work out what the best timing is to go out to public engagement. And the next schemes that are due, the council, myself, the team, will be going out to public engagement commencing the spring of next year. I do understand that at least one meeting is trying to be called for before then. I know that, on behalf of the officers and myself, it would be good if that did not happen, because we will not be ready with anything like the information necessary to have a valuable meeting at that time. How am I doing for time, Chair? Have I got another 5-10 minutes? I've been 13 minutes, right? Okay, I'll do it in 20, I promise you. The ETRO for the Lower Lansdowne scheme was relayed following the fact that we found out some minor procedural issues, and has all been put in place and implemented. As with all these schemes, first couple of days, it took a while before drivers realised that there had been a change. Obviously, it's only been in place for a week, so it's far, far too early to have any views on whether or not the scheme itself, which is, of course, a trial, is successful and will be made permanent or not. But I think it is fair to say that some of the issues we saw in the first couple of days, given the fact we've now put in extra signage just to make it incredibly clear what's going on, some of the issues have calmed down in terms of drivers not really understanding what the changes meant. The Sydney Road experimental traffic regulation order. The statutory public consultation ended on the 3rd of October. We got an awful lot of data from that, and it's been collected as part of the trial and will now be considered. The view is that we hope sort of early next year to be in a place where a single member decision could be taken. We got an awful lot of good feedback, and it was very interesting to see how the feedback changed throughout the course of the trial. So that's why it's really quite important that we don't make snap decisions in the first couple of weeks about a trial. We give it some time to bed in. So next year, early next year, we hope that people will be able to have worked through all the input we've got, ready to do a report for the Cabinet member who will be making that decision. So, read the Vision Zero. We absolutely are working with the Safe Systems programme. And it was interesting, I don't know if anyone saw Louise Haigh yesterday with one of her first addresses to the Transport Committee. She said it far more eloquently than I could about, crashes aren't accidents. Crashes are things that we should be able to work to mitigate against as far as possible, and that's absolutely what we've been trying to do in Baines. So it's not just what I'm trying to say, it's not just a byproduct of our work, but we actively look for and become responsible within each of the roles that we've got, whether you are in the road safety team or in fact you're in the wider highways team. This is part of your job. And the shared responsibility across society for safer roads and road size, safer road users, safe speeds, safe vehicles, and also suitable post-crash response for when they do very, very sadly happen. Winter maintenance is what we're now moving on to. We have already done our first trial run of the gritters, and they all worked perfectly. Nothing went wrong. We don't often have much humour at PDS, but I thought I would just share with you that we do have chats sometimes about some of the authorities name their gritters, and I think it's something that we at Baines might want to consider. So a Scottish authority has named one of theirs, Yes Sir, Ice Can Boogie, which I thought was quite good. The Grittist Showman. I mean, I can see this catching on. Kevin Fridges was another one that I thought was particularly funny, and Sleetwood Mac. So anyone got any more ideas for our gritters, please do just send them through. On the serious point, we do about 57 gritting runs per year. The maps are available on our website. They concentrate very, very much on, as you would imagine, bus routes and major routes. We do try and think about how we can make the pavements equally safe, but it's more complex than you would hope. The grit that we put down has got an element of grit and an element of salt in it, but it's actually activated more when tyres go over it. Because that doesn't happen on a pavement, there isn't that kind of weight pressing down on it. We can't use the same thing on a pavement and get the same kind of response. So we're looking at what we could potentially use because given our hierarchy, which we adopt and are very proud of, that, walking comes above cycling, comes above public transport, comes above private cars, we should make sure that it's safe to walk where possible as well. I'll skip over that bit. Oh, sorry, I'm getting there, I promise you. Traffic management, so what we're looking to do, we're looking at the new bus maintenance contracts that I've said. We're doing our Vision Zero, the internal launch of the Safe Systems approach. We are trying to complete our upgrade to traffic signals. As you remember from last time, we didn't get our grant because although we were bad, we weren't quite bad enough, but I think we're now getting to be in the bad enough section. And we're going to continue the deliver of the local highways improvement programme. We're looking to do about 2.8 million of work, and obviously budget dependent, we want to try and continue that kind of delivery next time. Highways maintenance, I think I have gone through more or less. Parking. Another bit of good news, we have traditionally struggled to fill our civil enforcement officer roles. We've currently got 28 of the 30 filled. That may not hold because it is a job that has quite a high turnover. But we've done that by changing the way that we run some of the shifts to make it more possible for people with childcare or students to be able to take the jobs on. So we've not just sat back and gone, no, we can't find any. We've worked really proactively, and I think we're doing better than many of the other authorities in our area. Park and ride, I think that would probably be the last thing I'll have time to talk about, though I do want to talk very quickly about Western Gateway. We're very close to having a park and ride action plan. What that means is when we took the contract on, we had to make sure that it was going to cover its costs. We are second in the country in terms of park and ride provision, in terms of customer satisfaction. I want to see us be first. That's what I've set the team the target of. And I think in order to do that, we probably need to offer more services. But we do not currently subsidise our park and ride, and we are phenomenally unusual in that. So we need to make sure we've got the money to invest in future services. Final thing I'll talk about very, very quickly, Chair, if I may, is Western Gateway. We have provided a carbon assessment tool for local authorities such as Baines where they want to use it, which will be helpful for all the things that Sarah was saying. And on that, I just must say, if any of you do have residents' association meetings or parish council meetings, please do invite the joint team that Sarah was talking about. I had them coming to a couple of my areas, that are conservation areas. So many people signed up about the retrofitting there and then. It's such a good offer that's on at the moment. Can't recommend it enough. We've been asked to put in a multi-billion-pound bid for work at Western Gateway. That's billion with a B, which we're working on now, which is very exciting. Obviously, all the work has to be cross-region. We're still pushing for the M4 to South Coast study, which is currently still sitting on the Secretary of State's desk, which is where it's been for over 2 years now. Though I did notice that yesterday again she talked about clearing out all the things that were sitting there, and the other thing she mentioned was the parking consultation that was done a while ago about pavement parking. She said that she intended to come out with some recommendations which would be great about that. She also said she intended to come out with some multi-year funding for active travel, in the same way that I get them for highways. It would be very good if Sarah's team got multi-year so they could also make the kind of plans. That would be fantastic. And 100 million was a start, but very small for active travel. Final comment is that what we're doing predominantly at Western Gateway is taking on board that we've all got increased housing capacity, and it's something I'm phenomenally proud of. We are now talking about what it is we need as a region to invest in terms of transport, which may be as radical as new railway stations. So when we end up building houses, we do not in any way bake car dependency into them. We have the provision for people to get to their workplace, either because their workplace is sufficiently close for them to walk or cycle to, or that there's a very efficient way of public transport to get there, so that building new roads and putting cars on is not the default to what do we do when we're trying to build houses. So sorry, that was a bit of a canter through what is a very large, complex scheme of schemes that we're working on, and I would like to just finish by saying my officers are working phenomenally hard in sometimes really quite challenging circumstances, and I couldn't be prouder of them.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. That was, well, amazing, the amount of stuff you're doing. I don't know how you keep up with it, so thank you for that. Joe, would you like to start?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. And again, was any of this sent in advance for people to read?
It was all circulated well in advance.
Thank you. My question is then, if I'm only allowed one, I'll make a point first, actually. So last year, I walked with officers on pavements in Lambridge to see the problems that we had, of which there were significant. And I was essentially told by officers that pavements had to be a certain amount deep before they could actually make them better. So although there were different parts of roads that we walked along, we were told that they couldn't actually go back and make them better because they weren't deep enough to have caused actual problems accordingly. But there is an ongoing issue of that. But my question actually goes back to your key walking routes. What data does the council have on key walking routes in Bath and separately for market towns in North East Somerset?
Sorry, I'm going to have to use the same answer as Sarah, because sadly our officers aren't able to be here with us today. I'll take that away and get the data sent to you.
Yeah, Debs?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Manda, for that amazing update. Probably because I'm new, I don't really understand the Western Gateway structure and our role and then how it helps our residents. So could you say a little bit more on that?
Yeah, good question. So Western Gateway is a sub-regional body which actually sits above WECA. The reason why we spend so much time with WECA is generally WECA has the money. So it is WECA plus going down to the south coast. So Dorset goes down as far as Devon and Cornwall. It also has within it Wiltshire. So I think there's a little bit cut off there, and the top bits of South Gloss that come in. So basically anything from the M4 to the south coast that isn't Devon and Cornwall sort of fits in that area. In terms of the transport section of that, I'm currently chair of it, which means that we set the agenda very much for what it is that we want to invest into and we want to put focus on. So I am really proud of the fact, because Baines of all areas is looking at how best it can, that the decisions we're going to be making now on the local plan and where we put houses are going to determine what our authority looks like for a very long time. So having this influence within Western Gateway means that that is now at the top of the priority list, not Baines, but the whole way of looking at how we deliver the infrastructure first before the housing is the thing that they all unanimously signed up to being the thing that we need to concentrate on.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for such a great update. And I just want to start with a comment as well. I've had quite a lot of positive feedback from residents and also parish councillors, and I may be directly quoting when saying the soccer has come out more for the drains around our areas, and it's made a huge difference with flooding. So whatever you're doing, do more of that, please. In your report, I know if you read it, there's about the bank in Stanton Drew. So I just want to say thank you to you and the officers for identifying that, because often rural communities are overlooked, and we've obviously had that in the past with previous councillors in my ward. But I did want to ask, what is your department going to do to continue considering the rural villages, especially in the context of our changing climate and highways and flooding? And I know you did say it's not just about the drains, but that is an element to the climate crisis in our area.
It's a really good question, because it's very easy sometimes for money and resource to sort of get sucked in to the big towns because there are more people who are accessing them, etc. But absolutely, when we do our marking and scoring for prioritisation for where we do, I'm absolutely adamant that we have to be authority-wide, because the fact that fewer people may use a road in a car in a rural area than may use a road in a car in the centre, it is more necessary for them to do that than it is elsewhere. So the investment in that is equally important to me. So please, when we're going through the budgeting process, looking at what's going to be done for next, absolutely that's going to be one of the key determinants.
Alex?
Thank you very much for your report. I'll thank you for the work that's been happening on the Chew River Bridge, which is in both mine and Councillor Waite's ward. I see in the report here that we've got cycling parking that's been put in the high street. I was wondering if I could have a meeting with your office or whoever's responsible for cycling infrastructure, where I could kind of walk around my ward with them and see if there's any other place we could have some infrastructure, because Keynsham has got quite a large cycling population now, which necessarily it wouldn't have had 5 years ago. So if that's something that can be arranged, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that can be arranged, and I don't want to put words in my colleague's mouth, but it might be as well if we try and do it as a joint thing, because it could also be that we might look for more areas that when we get more funding we might be able to put cycle storage hangars as well as just the parks, because if cycling is taking up, people may need somewhere to store them overnight as well as somewhere when they're coming in. So absolutely we can do that, yeah. Okay.
John?
Yes, thank you very much for your update. I have a question about the street lighting and the LEDs, and you mentioned that we've basically replaced all the lights with LEDs. The technical standards for LEDs are actually developing very rapidly, particularly on the aspect of the spectrum and how it affects nocturnal animals, which is bats primarily, but lots of others as well. I wondered, do we have any feel for what the lifespan of the LEDs will be, when we might be looking to replace those, such that we can then incorporate the new technical standards?
Good question. So you're spot on right. Each time we do a new road, we're almost using, we always use the latest available when we can. We tend to work on a 20-year replacement cycle. So unless there is a grant suddenly become available to go back and refit all the ones that were done first, it's unlikely that the new ones will get replaced until they get to end of life. But what we can do is on the rolling programme make sure that we have the latest available, because you're right, it's not just about, obviously it saves us money, it's more environmentally sound, but it's what it does ecology-wise. And also in some of the historical areas within Bath, some of the earlier LEDs, I'm getting to the edge of my knowledge of the physics terms for this, but they had a bright lux that doesn't have quite the same ambiance, should I say, as some of the older, more gentle LED lights. And now we can get the more gentle LED lights. So we're trying to do that. But it's as and when they come up for renewal. We don't have a programme to go back and renew everything.
Okay, we're 5 minutes over, but we'll have 3 questions and then we'll stop.
Okay, mine's a relatively quick one. So thanks for the update, Manda. Two of the things that I hear a lot about from residents are the need to refresh road markings, where they've worn away, and also the point about resurfacing more pavements. So it's really good to hear that that's part of the work programme. So just a quick question on those. What's the best way for residents to report that? Is that Fix My Street, those specific locations? And secondly, when road markings are refreshed, is it possible to tie that in with the timing of new road markings going in? Because sometimes we have a situation where the yellow lines are extended next to where there should be yellow lines, but you can't see the other ones because they've worn away. And is it possible to bring that together, or is it too difficult? Thanks.
So answering your first one first, yes, Fix My Street is always a very good way of doing these things. Having said that, if there's a big area that you as a ward councillor are aware of, please send it in to me and the team, and we always keep a rolling list of the things that we're made aware of. One of the things that I too get a little bit frustrated by is if someone's there and they've got all the equipment and the painting lines, why don't we just... So getting that coordination is key. I think we've taken a really, really good first step by moving to these area TRO processes, whereby A, people get work done more quickly than they did in the past, and B, efficiently, it's all done together in the same area in the same time. But to try and tie in the maintenance with the new is something we've not always done efficiently, but it's definitely the aim that we want to do. And if ever you're aware of one, please let me know, and then I can take it back to the team, and we will consistently get better at it, I hope.
June?
Thank you. Oh, yes. Yeah, love the report. Very interesting fact about the salt on the pavements compared to the roads. And it's pavements and roads that I'm concerned about in Westmoreland Ward. I do write in very regularly through the years about the roads, and I do quite often get a message back to say, you're not such it's not such an important road. And I'm sure it's because a lot of the ones I home in on, because of their state and because of what residents say, are not on bus routes. And I feel if it's not on a bus route, it gets overlooked. But if you take, for example, Brook Road, that is such a rat run. I feel it's almost the equivalent of a bus route, if you see what I mean. And it does, it is the only access route to an awful lot of houses to the left, because, I should say, I suppose, the east, because every road is a dead end. So we all have to use that. Now, I know that you report potholes on Fix My Street. However, these have issues that are not just about potholes. and it's like you're driving over gravel and rubble and dips and dops, and where they've resurfaced the patch, it then has been sinking, and so the roads are still in a dreadful state.
Can you come to an end, June?
I
think
have
we've got
written, I have put down, would you be happy to join me and walk around some of my streets? And please.
I think that's probably more appropriate. I mean, I will join, but it's more for the officers to do. And I do appreciate what you're saying, June. And if we had more money, I promise you, more money and more resource, we would do more streets. But there has to be a prioritisation metric. And I'm with you. I have roads in my wards that are really quite heavily used but don't get resurfaced. So let's take ward-specific things as opposed to policy out of here, and we'll have a chat.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. I've just got a couple of points then. I got my question, so I'll be really quick. The microsurfacing work that we had some done in Poulton, quite a large area actually. I just want to highlight an issue with that, where they go around and they cover the drains over completely. Now that's all well and good because they do rectify it, but it's the period of time from when they do the work to the rectification of the drains that's a bit an issue. And yeah, my inbox could do without the endless complaints about it. The other thing is that Portland Parish Council recently did a lovely fully solar-powered lighting project in their Memorial Park to improve, obviously, the feeling of safety within residents. So I just invite you to come and look at that. It's a really brilliant project. My question is on bus stops. You mentioned about improving bus stops across the area. I just wondered if we had an idea of the costs that we were putting in as a council to improve those bus stops. I am aware, and panel, I can't remember if it was the previous iteration of this panel, but the Weka Mayor did come and ask if we could hand over our bus stops so that they could be funded by the West of England Combined Authority. Because, you know, as you say, we haven't got a lot of money, and any opportunities to be able to save money, like on replacing bus stops, would have been beneficial, and maybe, say, stop the implementation of car parking charges in Midsummer Norton.
I mean, it's a brave person who says giving something over to WACA means that it gets more money spent on it, because that hasn't been our experience with some of the other areas. Because we're currently in the middle of a procurement process, as I say, I can't give out figures because that would be breaking all the procurement rules. But I can report back when we've got officers, hopefully next meeting.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the questions. Thank you very much to our two Cabinet members for coming in and giving us such a comprehensive overview of the work they're doing. So we're very grateful to you. I hope you'll come again soon. And we pass over to Tim, who's going to talk about waste management.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies. First, we do not have Chris Major this morning or Summer Porter. We've been called to an emergency meeting. We do have the A team with us, Lisa Gore and Sarah Jeffries, who will take you through a report in a few minutes' time. What I will ask when you go through the report is please stick to the actual waste strategy. It is so easy to divert off into other areas of the Labour portfolio, if possible. There's a lot of things going on in waste at the moment, and I'll let the two ladies update you now, okay?
Are you able to move into the technology without any problem? You can go where you want. I have no preference. Okay, lovely. I didn't have a preference, but June certainly does, so that's fine.
Were you going to be able to put a PowerPoint up? Oh, it's over there. Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On the big screen. No.
Oh, yes. We're very excited up there because we've got it on our screen as well, so we don't have to sort of stretch our necks around to look at the screen. So technology does work. It's wonderful. Sometimes. Good point. Okay, we've all had the report, and it's quite a long report, so what I'm suggesting, politely, is that if you could just talk to the salient points so that there's more time for questioning.
Okay,
That would be
noted.
lovely.
All right, thanks very much. So just to introduce myself, my name's Lisa Gore. I'm the Waste Strategy Manager in the Place Directorate, here in place of Simon Porter today. So I'll run through some key updates from the waste services as you've got in the report, and then hand over to my colleague Sarah, who'll pick up on the Bath Recycling Centre project. So could I have the next slide for those that can see it? Thank you. So significant change in waste services over the last 12 months. In January 2024, we relocated our recycling collection service and our refuse collection service to one state-of-the-art facility now at Keynsham Recycling Hub. We closed our depot in Keynsham and moved around 200 staff to that facility. So they've got fantastic welfare facilities now, significantly improved from what they had before. We've been able to make efficiencies on our haulage or our transport of waste from that site out. So now we use articulated lorries for our refuse and our garden waste. And that's allowed us to drop 4 lorries, our own lorries, and significantly reduce vehicle movements for waste away from the site by about 50%. The increased space is also allowing us to increase our commercial offer. So we've taken some inputs in from Bristol Waste over the last couple of months, and we're talking to neighbouring authorities such as South Gloucestershire for what we can do more perhaps next year when they're coming up for renewal with their cans and plastics. Next slide, please. So in terms of our fleet service, they've also merged depots. So we've gone from 3 workshops to 1 in Keynsham. And they've started the public MOTs and the repairs. They're doing very well. There's capacity to grow further again. The authorised HGV MOT facilities has been a slower start, and that is mostly down to the fact the external DVSA supply examiners and their availability. So again, there's capacity to grow in that area. We've made some savings where we've outsourced work previously. So we were previously outsourcing our TACO work. That's being done in-house now by our internal teams. Also doing our own HGV MOTs. And we have a giant car wash facility. That's the best way to probably describe it, but a HGV wash facility, which again has offered us savings because previously we were outsourcing that work. And there's capacity for commercial growth to bring in commercial fleet to use that facility. So we're on a bit of a marketing drive at the moment for our MOT facilities to really get the best use of that fantastic facility. Our highways team have a salt barn on site now, so they'll start imminently, if they haven't already, gritting from Keynsham for the first time. And our fleet team again will service their vehicles from site. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of our transition plan then to electrify our fleet, we've already got smaller vans out with our cleansing, our enforcement, our waste collection supervisor teams. They've now gone electric, and we've got some key milestones coming up now within the service. So we've got around a dozen cleansing vehicles that will move to electric fuel from next year, and then around another 12 RCVs for replacement in 2025, with a further 30 recycling trucks in 2027. We're starting some trials with suppliers over the next couple of months just to see battery life in the winter months and how that fares. So indicative costs at this time that we've had done actually show they're only slightly more expensive when you consider the whole life cost of the vehicles, because of the residual life of the battery that's left at the end as well, even though they've got that larger capital outlay up front. Next slide, please. Thank you. So other improvements we've done that have been a result of moving to Keynsham Recycling Hub are the solar panels on the roof. So we've got solar panels across the materials recycling facility, the workshops and the recycling centre roof at Keynsham. And that supplies the offices and the workshops with power throughout the day. Colleagues are exploring battery power, so we can potentially use that at other hours and export to the grid. And the solar panels will obviously help with the electrification of the fleet in future.
We have a reuse shop on site, for those that haven't been, that's been really well received by the local community. We're keeping unwanted goods out of the waste stream. We're managing to partner with quite a few local charities and internal welfare teams actually at getting goods where they're best needed. So again, there's room for growth there and supporting the council's core strategy of improving lives. Other climate emergency highlights are the rainwater harvesting on site that then get used for landscaping around the site, and the air-sourced heat pumps to ensure energy efficiency within the building. Next slide, please. So just to give an update on the core projects with my team at the moment, so we are working on City Centre Improvement Project, which is really looking at improvements in the public realm, reducing litter, gull attacks and maximising recycling for both businesses and domestic properties in the city centre. We're working with planning colleagues looking at the whole planning process, the consultation and ensuring with this housing growth that waste is being considered up front and making sure we've got sufficient waste and recycling provision in place for new residents. We're working with Curo, the housing provider, just to ensure that their bin stores are fit for purpose for the future as well, and residents have access to the full suite of recycling facilities. And then we've got an ongoing procurement and contract management timeline really to support all the in-house services that run from that, our services. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking ahead, the waste industry is about to go through some significant changes. So we've got some national waste collection and packaging reforms programme on the agenda. And there's three key strands really to the packaging reforms. The first one noted is the simpler recycling. And the ethos being there that everyone should be able to recycle the same core set of materials, no matter where they are in the country, whether they're at home or at work. And that one kicks in for businesses from March 2025, and then for domestic properties from March 2026. And then in addition to that, businesses and homes should have access to plastic film recycling from 2027. The second part of the reforms is extended producer responsibility. So this requires companies who produce and sell packaging in the UK to cover the full costs of putting their product on the market and recycling it to the end point. So fees to those companies will vary according to how recyclable their products are. But we're waiting for more detail on that and how the mechanism around how that will work. Next slide, please. Thank you. The third strand of the waste reforms packaging is actually the second bullet. It's the deposit return schemes. Essentially, this is the scheme which mirrors what happens on the continent now, whereby a consumer pays a redeemable deposit for any single-use plastic or cans drinks bottle that they purchase, and then they get it back when they take it to a collection point. That's due to come into effect in this country in October 2027. Other changes in the waste industry, we've got digital waste tracking on the agenda. It's due to come in April 2025. We don't have much information on that at the moment, but it is around a government initiative to be able to track waste fully, smarter regulation, being able to see the compliance on that whole loop, really. And then finally, but not insignificantly for us, we have the emissions trading scheme on the agenda. So this is the UK emissions trading scheme. It's been enforced since January 2021, but energy from waste facilities will come under that trading scheme from January 2028. And it's effectively a cap and trade system with carbon and the emissions of greenhouse gases. So we are expecting some significant waste disposal costs when that comes in. So that sort of concludes my update on waste services, so I'll hand across to my colleague Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, press the wrong button. Hi, my name's Sarah Jeffries. I'm Senior Project Manager working on Waste Modernisation Programme on behalf of Waste Services, and I'm here to talk specifically about part of that programme, which is the Bath Recycling Centre. So the graphic up on the screen right now shows you the part of the reason why the public recycling centre in Midland Road is being replaced, and it's because Midland Road is part of the Bath Western Riverside Housing Regeneration Programme area, which you can see in the blue and yellow pieces at the bottom. Midland Road is at the top there in the orange. Midland Road is due to close for housing redevelopment for affordable housing and market homes at the end of 2025, next year. And you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, the sort of triangular shaped orange piece is the proposed site for the relocation of the recycling centre, which is in Locksbrook Road. And the other site on the very left-hand side is the other depot in Locksbrook Road. Next slide, please. So we have actually got a live planning application in the system for the Bath Recycling Centre proposal. And that's the latest iteration of the drawings or the site block plan that you can see on there. And you can go onto the website and have a look at the scheme already. And we've done an update to that scheme, which we recently put in this week. So there's new and updated plans on the site now. The proposal is to build it over what's currently 2 sites. Cleansing yard is on the left-hand side, and there's a leased, short-term lease to local car dealership on the other side. And when the recycling centre, if it gets permission, is constructed, it will remain kind of in 2 distinct halves, with an operational side on the left there, with the skips and the tipping bays, and the public access side, where people will be dropping off, is on the right-hand side there, with the car parking bays shown on the right. The benefit with this site, one of the benefits, is that we can actually provide walking and cycling access, both from Locksbrook Road and also from the Riverside Path, shown at the bottom right-hand corner of the site. And it's less than a mile from the current Midland Road site. Next slide, please. It is a slightly smaller site than Midland Road. We will be able to offer the highest tonnages of items collected at Midland Road here. No hazardous waste, and you can see the list there of the main recyclable items that can be taken to the new proposed site. We also have a dry recyclables small collection point as well for people who arrive on foot by the entrance, paper, glass, cans and so forth. Next slide, please. So as I've just mentioned, there is a planning application on the system right now, which you can all go and have a look at if you want. And we have, over the course of the last few weeks, since the first statutory consultation period closed at the beginning of October, been making significant changes following feedback both from internal and external statutory consultees, and also from members of the public. So we've made a number of changes, so the list here is not an exhaustive list. If you want to see the full list of all the changes that have been made to the planning application in the last few days, then if you go to the website and look for the additional note, the outline note that's been submitted along with it. So just to give you a few of the highlights, in order to ensure that the root protection areas around the mature trees to the north of the site are not impacted, we've had to we've moved some of the drainage scheme away. We've also moved the boundary back in a bit and reduced the hard standing in that area to ensure those trees are safe and continue to flourish. We've also made some changes to the outside with extending double yellow lines at the recommendation of the Baines traffic management team, and added some no loading restrictions. The traffic management arrangements within the site have been updated as well in order to reduce reversing by members of the public, which should be safer. And pedestrian access has been moved to the other side of the entrance, the main entrance, so that it's easier to access on foot the small recycling area. We've also included additional documentation in the name of operational statement, a goal management plan and a landscape plan, which gives far more detail about how the site will operate and what we'll be doing to mitigate removal of trees and additional planting schemes that we can fit onto the site. And the lighting scheme has been altered, and we're going to be able to put a solid railing at the top of the gantry to reduce risk of noise as well. And talking of gantries, just to give you an illustration of the sort of thing that this might look like, this is not our site, this is quite an old one actually in London, But it just shows you that's how the skips will be, and there'll be steps up. We've also included some ramped access up to the skips as well, to make it easier for people with mobility issues or heavy items. And if the site gets permission, sorry, next slide, we are hoping to go to the planning committee in January, provided all of the planning processes can be taken care of and finished. By which, and if the site receives permission from planning committee, then the rest of those activities will be able to start. And we would hope to have construction concluded by the end of next year, enabling us to vacate the Midland Road site for the housing development the start of the following year, 2026. That's me done.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa and Sarah. Very good. Short. Well done. Slightly longer than Sarah, but not as long as Nanda, is how I would describe it. So we'll go around as we did for the first time. Do you have any questions?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the report. One thing that I find slightly frustrating with the report, I've got to be honest, is that there's actually no waste statistics in it whatsoever. So we've got no idea of how much, in terms of tonnages, the across Baines we're sending to landfill, or we're sending to energy from waste, which now that we don't burn coal is actually now the dirtiest form of energy generation in the UK. So it would be good to know those numbers and obviously understand how we're doing over a prolonged period of time in terms of increasing recycling rates and pushing more waste from the recovered for energy and into the upper areas. Because, well, we just simply don't have that information. Without that information, how can we really properly inform a waste strategy moving forward and properly scrutinise this paper?
Do you want to let them ask that question?
I'm happy to come back and give you a full detailed response with some statistics around what you've asked for. No problem.
Perfect. My next question was the figures for the vehicles. So again, there's nothing in there that actually suggests where we're looking towards with electric vehicles, or even actually, because the trial, I don't believe, did it happen in August, or is it ongoing, the trial with electric vehicles?
We're just about to take a refuse vehicle for trial, yeah, so I can get you some full details on that.
Okay, because it's just the only reason I ask is that in lots of cases these electric vehicles, for when they're for HGV use, don't tend to effectively deal with what they're set out. So I just wonder, we're sort of saying that we're electrifying the vehicles, but we don't really know where that's going to go or how many vehicles it's going to be. So I just wondered what significant impact that would be. And then a while ago, when we had a separate the net zero topic come up, I asked about what behavioural initiatives we're doing with the existing diesel fleet. You said you brought the tachos in-house. You should be able to look at driving styles, anti-idling, stuff like that, to actually reduce emissions from the diesel vehicles that we've still got, which I think we will have for a significant time to come while we move over and transition to an electric fleet.
Try and help out a little bit. We're looking at full electrification of the fleet by 2027. That is all vehicles fully electrically operated. So that, I'm not sure that helps you or not. We will be looking to retain some diesel trucks to ensure continuation of service whilst we actually embed the fleet in place. This could take a while to do. I fully understand your issues on emissions, and they will report back to you. I'll just write a report for you, and certainly all members of this committee as well. But the issue is making sure we get the right trucks. So we're looking at issues of rental trucks. We're looking at trial very shortly. And Lisa, what's the other link we're looking at as well?
I'd have to get more detail
We
back
look at
from
two
you.
different types of trucks anyway now. The Renault's slightly bigger and may give us even more capacity to actually reduce some of the routes we're actually running now.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a couple of other questions, and just
you come back to that, okay?
come back to that. All right, okay.
Is it, oh, it's okay. Yeah, sorry. Thanks very much. I've got 3 questions, actually. So is that okay? One is a bit longer than the other 2. Okay. First of all, I did go round to look at the site over the weekend. I couldn't get anything up online. It was all down when I was trying to look at the documents on the case that was for the application. I couldn't get on at all. But I did go round and have a look at the area. And I do know it's quite a difficult area from the point of view of getting out of Locksbrook Road onto the Upper Bristol Road, especially turning right. However, I was intrigued to see that, and I would like to know, please, was the former Fuller's Earthworks one of the 50-plus sites that were looked at either at either of the formal searches undertaken in 2019 and 2021, and if not, why not? And if so, why was it deemed not suitable? Because people, I got the impression from reading objections, feel that to have the site so near to the Midland Road one, it's needed more on the other side of the city, because we do have the fabulous Keynsham one. So that's number 1, please.
On the planning application, there is a statement about the site selection processes that have been gone through in the past. And I'm going to have to defer to that statement for now. Unless, Tim, obviously, if you want to add something.
Yes, the Fuller's Earth site was fully examined on all. Fuller's Earth site was fully examined on all processes of that site selection. It's rejected because it would cause a lot more cross-city traffic that you get to the site. Also, the landowner wants exorbitant amount of money for the site, which prevents it being usable by this council in this current budget.
Okay. Can I just say that you said it's going
Okay, very quickly if I try and answer this one as well. The amount of traffic exiting from this site will be minimal. The site has a booking system for vehicles to come in and come out. There's also 6 parking spaces there as well. So traffic will not need to queue on the street itself. That should take care of that particular issue. Also, we moved other items from the site, so when we move items from the sites from the transport depot, etc., and that reduces vehicle movements of heavy vehicles that were currently using the site. So there will be no more traffic on the site by using this site we've had previously.
Will you write this response? Will you send me this response?
We get response to yes?
Thank you.
Thank you. So my question was similar to Grant's, I think, but I looked at the latest statistics on our household waste recycling and note that our authority currently ranks very well alongside other unitary authorities with high levels of domestic waste being recycled and also relatively low levels of residual waste. But that residual waste does indeed go to energy from waste facilities currently, so presumably we have the looming prospect of increased charges for that when it goes into ETS. Although I note that the LGA is lobbying for these costs not to be passed on to councils, which would make sense. But with that context, my question was about what is the council doing currently, or what can we do to decrease the amount of waste that is going into black bins? I note that in the waste strategy it shows there's a lot of recyclables that are still going into our black bin waste, and presumably also the high street waste, the stuff that's in public litter bins, is also going into black bags. So what can we do to really reduce further that content to make sure that more stuff is being recycled, particularly food waste?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Completely agree, and food waste is our key target to get that out of the bins. There's still 50% showing in our waste analysis as being in those residual bins, so it is our focus. You'll see new livery on some of the new trucks that have gone out, pushing that message around food waste reduction, but I'm happy to get you a full written response of what we're planning to tackle waste reduction in our strategy. Yeah.
Also, new legislation coming in the next few years make sure all residential properties can have food waste collection. Currently, okay, food waste collection. Not all properties currently have food waste. Majority do, and some that don't. That will increase that sort of level. We are trialling at the moment new recycling bags to replace some of the recycling boxes we've got, and it's going to trial during the Christmas period. So we'll have answers back next year about new recycling containers, which will allow the waste to be contained a lot easier and actually stop it blowing around our streets, which then gets picked up and lands back in residual waste.
Where's the trial of that, please?
It's been all over Bath and North East Somerset. You may find one or two in your ward who were selected particularly for the trial period.
Thank you very much for the update. I have no questions.
Excellent. We are getting a bit pushed for time, but, you know, thanks, John.
Thank you very much for the update. It's good to hear about the plans that we've got for making all our vehicles electric in the future, so I'm happy with that, but I've got no questions.
Come on. Just want to say thank you very much for the report from everyone, and I'm really excited about the parish liaison meeting organised for Kingston Recycling Centre in March 25. I will be there. Very excited to go. It was around what Jess was saying about food waste. In my small enclave of where we get our bin collection, I would say we are the only family that put out food waste. And as an observation, food waste doesn't particularly take up that much space in the bin, does it? I understand it's a priority. And I guess my view is it's a culture change around that food waste. I know that you're going to email Jess with your full plans, but my question, I know you're so fantastic as a department about replacing bins and, you know, if a bin's damaged or whatever you get, is there maybe scope for providing food waste bags free of charge, just to encourage people to use them, or maybe some comms around, you know, it's cool to recycle your food waste, because in my village in particular, I would say it's a very low uptake.
Thank you, Councillor. I would agree. It is a real behaviour change to get into that mindset of recycling the food waste. With our new contract with the AD provider, so our anaerobic digestion facility, they can take any container, so any carrier bag, any bread bin, any shopping bag that you've got to line it. So we have stepped away from providing biodegradable liners. In fact, they don't like it. They take it out up front, they depackage all of the waste. So what we're saying is actually use what you've already got. If you've got bread bin liners, if you've got shopping bags that you're not using, or dog litter bags, or whatever to contain it, or, yeah, I use all sorts, whatever comes to hand at home, really. Brown paper bags. That's better than us providing, at cost, biodegradable liners. So we have shifted away from that.
But some comms around that would be good, because I was not aware of that.
Yeah, so we have actually put it in our annual waste leaflet, which should be hitting doors from next week. So look out for those, and it's on our website as well. But yeah, thank you.
So now I'm not quite sure what to ask, because I partly want to ask a follow-up to that. If you're using, no, I'm going to ask a follow-up to that question. If you're using things like bread bags, which are plastic, and certainly I know that I sent the local co-ops, you can take plastic, soft plastic that you can't take in the recycling there, but it has to be clean. So my question as a follow-up to that is, then what happens to those containers that you're putting in the food waste bag? Because if you're using biodegradable compost bags, surely they can just all go in together. But if you're using soft plastic, then aren't you creating a waste stream of unclean soft plastic that is also going to cause problems?
So as part of the anaerobic digestion process, liners up front anyway, because they're producing a product which is what they call PAS 110 compliant. So it's a soil conditioner that has to meet certain standards. They pull out the biodegradable liners up front, so they have depackaging units. And I'm happy to provide much more detail on that technical process if you like, but it all comes out up front before it goes through the facility. Oh, didn't answer it.
I don't think that's quite answered my question, which is then what happens to the containers and how does that waste stream that you then create get dealt with to prevent residual waste?
So the liners, do you mean for the food waste, that does get, that's part of the AD process, would go for energy from waste. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. A really useful report, and first of all, reduce, reuse and recycle is a really important piece of work across our community. We were delighted that you had a visit to the Pixatch at Keynsham site, and I now know that community groups can go to them. We have arranged for Transition Lark Hall to make a community visit next week. And I guess I'm making a broader point rather than a question, is that I really see that the recycling response by our community is a two-way process. It's not the council doing it to residents. Residents very much actively want to take part. I certainly know I have a resident that every Thursday after recycling in Larkhall walks the streets of Larkhall collecting all the rubbish that was blown around following that, which too is a major issue. So people are really engaged in this subject, and I guess looking at the Cabinet member, it's how do we work with that better and have that discussion. In terms of my actual question, my question is in terms of page 15, paragraph 2.44, is work on track to submit the Environment Agency permit variation application by the end of this year? What engagement has there been with the Environment Agency to date, especially in respect of the objections to the planning application relating to matters which should be addressed by the EA permit? Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? I got a bit lost halfway there.
Sure, it's to do with the EA permit.
Yeah.
So is work on track to submit the EA permit variation application by the end of the year?
Yes.
What engagement has there been with the EA to date, especially in respect of the objections to the planning application relating to matters which should be addressed by the EA permit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the EA permitting system is completely separate from the planning application, but yes, there is an EA response on the website to the application as it stands. So I can't remember exactly what's in that EA response on the website, but it is in the public domain against the planning application.
And the council is working with the Environment
Yes.
Agency on this piece of work?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we get to round two, so...
Thank you. Yeah, but, you know, on the permit, the EA will have, the council are likely to have an installation officer that works with them directly from the EA for their permit, as is to any other permitted industry. That's just standard practice, just to make you aware. It's probably because it's not a permitted installation. So just two simple questions that I just wanted to finish with. I've been alerted and actually found out for myself that clothing collections had stopped recently at certainly in Welton, and I've been told also at the new site in Pickash. So just wondering when they'll be available again, and if we're working to address the fact that we can no longer recycle clothing at those sites. And the only other one was whether, when we're aware of the figure that we're likely to receive from the extended producer responsibility regulations, because I was under the impression that we should be made aware of that figure in November. I know it's only the middle of the month, but could you let the panel know what that settlement figure is from those regulations, please?
Yes, of course, happy to. On your second point, in terms of textile collections, Yes, we're actively looking for a new provider, and as soon as we're able to secure them, we'll get those banks back in place. It was very last minute, our current provider pulled out, but we are directing people to their local supermarket banks and other local points that they can donate them to charity as in the meantime.
Will 3 staff be adequate to run the centre, and what will their roles be? Because admin, goal control, helping disabled people, administration, they're 4 things I can think of. Thank you.
I think it would be better, as I'm not a waste operations person, if Simon was here, he would be able to answer that question. I think it would be better if I got that written up for you. Thank you for the question. Simon Porter, the director. So I don't actually work in waste operations. I'm the project manager, but I can find out the roles of those actual staff. Yes.
I was surprised it just said 3 staff.
Yeah, that's the estimate so far from operations.
Okay. Shall I do my other question? Will there be any physical goal deterrents installed, or is it just going to rely on physical human presence and cleaning schedules? Because we all know the negative impact that goals have on people's lives.
Again, I will have to defer to waste operations. I apologise.
Thank you. So I had a question on another aspect of the update, which was about, it noted that there would be a review of planning guidance with the development team to ensure better consideration is given to recycling and waste storage provision and collection ahead of property growth. I really support that, and I just wanted to note that we've had a particular issue with a planning application in my ward where I have a lot of doubts about how the waste collection is going to operate. There's 16 homes where all the wheelie bins will be brought out very close to the pavement every week in order to be collected. I don't believe that waste collection had any comment in the consultation process on the planning application. So I wonder if you could say any more about what specifically you're looking at to improve and how that will work.
It's exactly that, to be honest, picking it up front before it hits the approval stage. So we work really closely with Highways, who are the statutory consultee for our area, so it's getting better communication and liaison with that team so they can feed back on waste. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask the question that I was going to ask before I got interested by your food waste answer. So this is a bit nerdy, and so I'm happy to have an answer in writing afterwards if you don't know. So originally, when the non-fossil fuel obligation was created back in the 1990s and early 2000s, and actually supported a lot of the energy from waste plants, they were originally set up to be energy from waste combined heat and power plants, so that the excess heat would then go into district heating systems, and that would, as a result, improve the carbon performance. So the question is, I know a lot of that, then a lot of the CHP wasn't switched on. It has been switched on in a number of places. So the question is, are any of our suppliers who are EFW at the moment, were they set up to do CHP? Is that likely to be switched on, and is that going to help at all with managing the carbon from those plants?
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll get you a written response so it's accurate, but there are plans, particularly with the Avonmouth plants with Bristol. I'll get you a detailed response.
Thank you. Page 29, again, going back to the Bath Recycling Centre, it says, the table headed other materials not collected. Does this mean that these materials will not be able to be deposited by residents at the proposed Locksbrook site? If yes, what are the plans for residents to recycle or dispose of materials, including soil and rubble, batteries, oil, fridges, freezers, TVs, computers, monitors and tyres?
No, sorry, excuse me, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, there will be some exclusions. We won't be able to take those items at the proposed Bath Recycling Centre, but they are also still taken at Welton and Pixash Lane.
What if you're a cyclist?
Pardon?
What if you're a cyclist and you don't have a vehicle? A box bike.
The council do run a paid-for collection service. You can actually look into that.
I have to say, a friend of mine used it. It was really, she was really impressed with it. The bought one. Yeah. Question.
Thank you very much. How are you ensuring that residents are recycling as much as they can? Because it's very easy in my ward to go around to see the black plastic bags and the other coloured bags not in the proper containers, just outside a lot of properties, and you can see the outline of the cardboard and of the bottles and of the cans. What are we doing to really get this point over, to be really proactive in getting this type of issue dealt with, please?
So, Councillor, I'm happy to give you, again, as I said to Jess, a detailed response. Yeah, around our waste strategy and our engagement plan, we have 2 waste education team officers covering the whole district, so it is responsive, perhaps more than proactive at the moment, but I'm happy to get in touch with you and give you the details for the next 12 months.
I think I hassle one of them, I think, quite regularly.
No, it's great. It's great.
Yes, we do have door knocking teams, and doors are knocked regularly, so people have a chance to be educated of how to put the recycled waste out.
Okay, I'm going to have a question. It's all right with you. Just so you know, I'm getting a bit fed up listening to you. No, joking, obviously. I noticed on the news last night that Bristol are going to go to a month with the old black bag, and South Gloucester at 3 weeks. Somerset are at 3 weeks from 2021. North Somerset are going next year to 3 weeks, and South Gloucester in 2026. So do we have any plans to reduce our black bag collection?
There are no plans to reduce our black bag collection.
Short and sweet, I like it. Okay. Anna.
Thank you very much. It's a question to Tim, if I may. I understand that the administration in Bristol has looked to Baines as ideas how to run the waste strategy. And I also understand that we tip a lot of national statistics in being very efficient at this. Are you going to put your department forward for any awards? Because I think we're outstanding in what we do, and I think you should do that for your department.
Thank you for suggesting. It's a very good idea.
That's even shorter than my answer. Has anybody else got any other questions? Or have we exhausted these wonderful people? Actually, a lot of interest in recycling and waste, isn't there? It's quite a hot topic. So,
I have endless ones, but I won't go on about them.
Well, I'm sure we're all grateful about that, June. So we move on. Thank you so much for coming and sparing the time. And thank you, Tim, for your contribution. It was lovely to see 3 Cabinet members. I may have mentioned that already. So we move on to the last item on the agenda, which is the work plan. At the moment, in January, we have the housing plan update. Now, I would suggest, which you won't be, well, I think you'll understand, but I'll be surprised, given what's happened with the government and the increased number of housing that we now have to expect. I think we all know that the process is essentially started from scratch again. Taking into account what they've learned already from the other earlier new plan consultations. So I'll personally be surprised if it's going to be there in January. So we have the opportunity to bring in a few other things, should you wish to. And I know Jess had some ideas, so I'll pass to Jess and then to anybody else who's got any ideas.
Yeah, thank you. So it was really good to hear about waste today, actually, because I don't think we've covered that before. So that was a good one. Two topics that I wanted to suggest were, firstly, to look in more detail at biodiversity net gain and how what we've learned so far as an early adopter and where we're going next. And if we could incorporate a site visit to that, I think that would be really good. And then the second one would be to look at progress to install renewables, looking both at the council's own estate and also within the community and what we can do to kind of enable and support networks.
They sound really, really good, yeah, because I think that they're two areas we've not covered in any great detail so far this year. So, well, they're on the list. Congratulations. Anna.
With your advocacy hat on as well, can we have something around water quality and what we're doing as a council to improve the river system? Again, a site visit would be fun, wouldn't it? But yeah, well, you did mention it on your update. But
yeah, that's something that probably I should have asked for, but well done, Anna. So that's, yeah. Like I said to the question earlier on, it's a really complex issue, rivers. That's something I didn't appreciate until I got involved in it, just how many people use rivers for all sorts of things. So the council is not one of the major players, but I'm sure we can get information and we get a better understanding of what's going on. Because if you're anything like me, you thought you understood, but you discovered that actually you don't. Well, not as much as you thought you did anyway. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's certainly on the list. Put a gold star next to it. Anybody else? Yes, go on.
I'm just wondering whether we'll have an annual homelessness update, which we used to have for this panel, on an annual basis. We haven't had one for some time. So, I know it links to the housing one, but it always used to be a separate agenda item.
Yeah, also good. Joe, Anne.
Saskia has asked if there could be something for a movement strategy, school streets and Vision Zero, as all have been promised previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. That is on the list. Obviously, it's been postponed, but it's definitely still there. Anything from anybody else? Block. What about that? Okay. Have a safe journey for wherever you're going now.